The following program is paid for by Lifespan Wealth Management, providing financial advice since 1993. At Lifespan Wealth Management, the main thing they do is provide retirement planning and advice and manage their clients' investment accounts. If you're looking for a financial advisor, contact their office at 478-922-8100 to set up your complimentary consultation. Lifespan Wealth Management has offices in Macon and Warner Robins for your convenience, and you can learn more about them by visiting their website at retirerelax.com. While you're on the site, visit the special report section, which provides great financial education information on many different topics. You can also sign up to receive their digital feeds, which are short videos providing great information relevant to retirement, investing, and matters that affect your money. They also offer seminars to the community at no cost. If you're looking for a guest speaker for your church or civic organization, give them a call to discuss the topics you would like them to cover. Again, their contact number is 478-922-8100. Now, from the Macon studio of News Talk 940 WMAC, it's time for Your Money with Sherry Goss, Randy Goss, Jonathan Eisner, and Corey Albrecht.
Good morning, Middle Georgia. It's great to be back with you this morning. And as always, we thank you for taking time out of your Saturday to be with us. Also, we are glad to be back in Georgia. Sherry and I took a trip, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But you know what? No matter where you travel, it's always nice to return home. But like I said, we'll talk more about that in a second. And we'd like to also welcome Jonathan back to the office and the show. Welcome, Jonathan.
Hey, it's good to be back. I do want to say that we appreciate the support that we've gotten over the last month since Gabriel was injured. It's been an incredible blessing. And I know that you guys mentioned the incident on the show a couple times. We definitely have seen all the support, financially and otherwise, that has come in from some of our clients and listeners from the show. So thank you guys so much. It's been a tremendous blessing to have that support. Let's do a quick market update before we talk about the Alaska trip. The Dow Jones surged past major milestones to hold at consecutive all-time highs above 54,300. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 hovers around 7723, and the tech-heavy NASDAQ composite rests around 26,363. There's been a small tech and AI cool-off. While mega caps like NVIDIA continue to lead gains, investors' enthusiasm for hardware and memory providers has faced massive pressure. Companies like SpaceX and AMD recently rattled investors by revealing soaring capital expenditures heavily tied to AI infrastructure building. Driven by exceptionally strong corporate earnings, with Q2 S&P 500 margins spiking to a historic 16.7%, capital is actively rotating into traditional sectors like energy and financials. With core PCE sitting at 3.3% and the national debt quickly marching toward $40 trillion, 3 dissenting FOMC members voted for a rate hike. Markets are closely tracking the upcoming payroll data to see if our new Fed chair will implement an interest rate change ahead of the September meeting, which that actually came out this morning, and I believe it was better than, this morning being Friday, I believe it was better than expected.
Yeah, and I heard that the unemployment rate has dropped significantly, and right here in Georgia, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. It's even better than the national average.
Georgia continues to display massive structural economic momentum. The state's labor force hit a historic record of 5.46 million workers. The state's unemployment rate sits comfortably at 3.5%, significantly outperforming the national average. Local growth is projected to steady at about 1.5% GDP growth over the coming months. Healthcare professional services and massive construction pipelines, specifically around tech-related data centers, are acting as the primary shield against a broader macroeconomic downturn.
All right. Before we get into the rest of the material, I wanted to bore you with some of the details from our vacation. And if you subscribe to one of our social media channels, you saw the pictures that we were sending out from Alaska in real time. So Sherry and I just returned from Alaska, like I said, where we spent 12 days exploring Alaska from Seward to Denali State Park with several points in between. We started over a year ago researching what we really wanted to do on this trip. And to do that, we bought a National Geographic book on Alaska and took the time to comb through the book and identify what we really wanted to see and do while we were there. Then, of course, we used Google to dive deeper into each of those activities. And once we identified those activities, we contacted an Alaskan travel company to put the itinerary together. They know the lay of the land and how long it takes to get from point A to point B and so forth. One of the things that we highly recommend if you're going to travel is to get a TSA pre-approved, and they will issue a well-known traveler ID. This makes getting through the TSA ultra quick and easy. In Atlanta and in Anchorage coming back, this allowed us to use a separate TSA line, and we did not have to take our shoes and belt off. And the carry-on piece of luggage that we have with the laptops, iPads, and other electronics did not need to be opened, and each one of those placed in a plastic bin. They just X-rayed the entire case. I think that's long overdue. We flew nonstop to Anchorage to start the trip, and we gave ourselves a free day on the first day to explore Anchorage and to rest up from the 8.5-hour trip on the flight, which really equates to about 12 hours of travel. So we walked the streets of Anchorage, which is a relatively small city as cities go, with a population of under 300,000. That's not much bigger than Macon, and it's about 3 times the size of Warner Robins. But the thing that really struck us most about Alaska was how clean it was, and not just Anchorage, but we did not see a single piece of trash on the side of the roads like we do here. Well, our first excursion was to Brooks Falls in Katmai, and this is the famous site where bears are photographed pouncing on salmon, swimming up the waterfalls to spawn. The day that we went, there was about 15 bears of all ages standing in the water. And there's an interesting thing about how bears interact with each other. The mature bears will not help the junior bears catch fish. They expect them to learn in order to survive. But the senior citizen bears, who are not as quick as they once were assisted by others. The very capable bears would catch fish and give them to the senior bears. It was pretty cool.
That is.
To get to Brooks Falls from Anchorage, we had to take a small plane, which was a 1960 vintage de Havilland. It seated 8 people, and the flight took about 2.5 hours to get to Brooks Falls. But the small planes in Alaska are like taxis everywhere else. The scenery was amazing from the air, and when we landed on the lakes, there were 42 other planes covering every inch of the shoreline. And after we had landed, we had to attend bear school. There we learned what to do and what not to do if we were confronted by a bear in the wild. From bear school to the Brooks Falls was about 2.5 miles, and right through bear country with no guardrails at all. And we did encounter a bear. It was in the woods. We heard it moving and saw the little brown flash, and it heard us. And what you're supposed to do is, we did what was instructed: talk loudly and slowly back away. The bear was more interested in the fish in the water, so it just moved on. The bears,
they tell you to talk loudly when the bear is.
They do. They don't want you to. They want you to be talking constantly as you walk through bear country, because bears, they're not really interested in you. They're interested in easier game. You know what I mean? So by talking and louder than you normally would, it alerts the bear that you're coming.
Okay.
And then the bear just might go ahead and move on.
Gotcha.
But if it were to come out on the trail with you, you just keep talking and start walking backwards. But don't run, because they say you'll never outrun a bear.
Right.
That 1,000-pound bear can run 35 miles an hour. So I know it'll catch me. But anyway, the bears in the water at Brooks Falls was probably our favorite excursion. We said we could have probably stopped right there. And the scenery throughout the whole thing was just stunning. The only downsides of the day is that we dressed in layers like we were advised to, and we had read about, because the temperatures change so rapidly. Plus, we were advised to dress warm for the aircraft ride, but the temperatures got up to 70 degrees, and we were quite sweaty by the time we got back down to the plane. After returning to Anchorage, we rented a 4x4 and set out for Talkeetna, which is about 2.5 hours north of Anchorage. And from there, we chartered another flight, which was supposed to fly Denali State Park, which we wanted to fly around Mount Denali. However, the weather became unflyable, so we took our tour of the glaciers. They are very impressive. Unfortunately, they are melting and getting smaller each year. And you may not believe in global warming, but seeing the glaciers in the state that they're in now might change your mind. And they say that Alaska's glaciers are melting 4 times faster than other glaciers around the world. Talkeetna is a great little town with one stop sign, but what the town lacks in modern amenities, it makes up for in personality. Everyone was friendly and chatty, and if you asked someone a question, they would kindly stand there and talk to you as long as you wanted. And Talkeetna is widely known as the real-life inspiration for the 1990s television series Northern Exposure. The next day, we drove to Denali State Park, and Denali is the home of Mount Denali, formerly named Mount McKinley, which is the highest mountain in the United States, standing 20,310 feet high, and it's absolutely beautiful. And even though it was late July, it was still covered in snow. On a clear day, you can see the mountain from 135 miles away. And there's an interesting fact about Mount Denali is that only 30% of visitors ever get to see the top of that mountain. So 70% of the people who show up to go on a vacation there to see it, they don't get to see it.
Right.
You know, this is due to the clouds and the ever-changing weather on the mountain. The weather can change without warning. And we were lucky we were able to see the top of the mountain 2 days in a row. So the 30% club is what they call it. This is the club. It's not a formal club in the sense that you might think. It refers just to the fact that 30% of the visitors to Denali State Park ever get to see the top of the mountain. And we could have bought a pin that said that, but we didn't. The day after we visited Denali, we went fly fishing in the Bruscana River. And there we were after the Arctic grayling. And these fish are called the Alaskan sailfish. The actual fish is not as large as the ocean sailfish, and as a matter of fact, the average height or the average weight of these fish is only a half pound to 1.5 pounds. But what makes these fish unique is the large sail-like dorsal fin, which is very tall and long, almost the entire length of the body, looking like a ship sail on the back of the fish. The scenery getting to the river while we were on the river was stunning. Sherry was out there in the river with me, and we both caught some fish, but the mosquitoes were just terrible. And I was awarded a hat from the fly fishing guides. And it wasn't because I was an exceptional fly fisher, but it was because the waders they gave me had a leak. The water was in the low 40s, and there was a hole in the heel of my left foot. So right off the bat, my foot was very cold. And as I waded out further, I found that I also had a hole behind my left knee. So the 4 hours on the river was very cold, at least in one half of my body, but it was still fun. Sherry hung up the fishing after about 2 hours, and she was kicked back on a rock, basting in the sun, minding her own business. And I was in the river fishing, and on a cask, I caught her while she was sitting on the rock. So I'm glad she had a hat on, because if not, it would have gone right into the head.
Right, that wouldn't have gone very well.
Yeah, it made for a long
while
trip.
She was
after that.
basking in the sun.
Right. Anyway, from there we drove 4 hours south past Anchorage to Seaward, where we went deep sea fishing. And you know, I will say thank goodness for the scopolamine patch we were prescribed. If it weren't for those, we would have both been green. Matter of fact, Sherry fished for about 10 minutes and had to go sit down. But thank you, Doc C, for that. But we caught several halibut and rockfish. And if you've never eaten rockfish, you're missing out. They are absolutely exceptional. The halibut we caught were all in the 10 to 12 pound range. But when we got back to the dock, a sister ship was weighing 2 large halibut, and they both weighed about 190 pounds.
Jeez.
Yep, they were huge. The skipper said it took over an hour to bring each one of the fish in. But, you know, their halibut made ours look like bait. After we got our fish to the shippers, we drove back to Anchorage and prepared for the return trip. So if you're planning a trip to Alaska and not a cruise, I will tell you to check the weather. We severely overpacked because of the intel that we either read or was conveyed to us. It made us sound like we needed to wear multiple layers of clothing all the time. Well, we were not prepared for the 70-degree days, and luckily I did bring a pair of shorts. But do carry mosquito spray. The mosquitoes there will make your life miserable. I made a joke that you need a hunting license for those things. Also, every hotel that we stayed in had washers and dryers, so you can do a load of clothes of your laundry and not have to pack as much clothing. So the best meal that we had while we were there was from 48th State Brewing Company, and I think I posted a picture of the yak burger that I had when I was there. It didn't make me yak, so it was very good and very large, and the flavor was similar to beef but with a twist, but it wasn't gamey either. The other was elk stew, very much like beef stew, but absolutely incredible. So if you want to take a trip like this, contact Alaskan Travel, an Alaskan travel company, and have them put the itinerary together and reserve the hotels, planes, and excursions, and so forth. So if you're going to Alaska and you need the name of a good travel company who knows the area, give us a call, and we'll get you that information. It was probably the best trip we've ever been on.
Wasn't there something with the whales too?
Oh, yeah. The day before we went deep sea fishing, we took a charter boat and had probably 100 people on it. wasn't that many. And we were going out to see the fjords and wildlife, and there were schools of killer whales, orcas, swimming. And I have a fantastic video that we posted on our social media site that happened to be in the right place at the right time. And, 5 whales came up all in synchron, and then went back down. But on that trip, we saw, humpback whales, belugas, sea lions, seals,
Man.
schools of jellyfish, which just produced a very eerie looking green glow. It was beautiful. But when those talking about the fjords, when that iceberg gets right to the ocean, it can be as much as 160 feet of just sheer ice straight down. So it was just incredible. I mean,
It sounds like a trip of a lifetime.
I can't say enough good about that. And how clean and how friendly everybody was there, and everyone drove sane. It wasn't like driving in Warner Robinson,
Yeah.
And there was hardly any semi trucks. So
There was what?
hardly any semi trucks like we have here now,
yeah,
because of
nice.
the ports. But yeah, it was a great trip. So plan in advance, and if you need an Alaska travel company, call me.
Well, when I got back to the office this week, I said, "How long were you on your trip? 2 weeks?" And you said, "No, only 12 days." And
Yeah.
that just struck me because
It's strange because Sherry and I really don't take a lot of big vacations.
Yeah.
And we figured we need to take something. But as we're getting older, it's like we want to do stuff before
Sure.
while we still can.
Yeah.
So, but people that were there, they came in on cruise ships too, and then all these cruise ships have their own bus lines basically. And they'll take you all over Alaska and take you on excursions. But we didn't want to do that. We wanted to kind of be on our own and be able to have the flexibility to do the things that we wanted to do. So we were able to stay in Seaward and do the sightseeing for the wildlife and deep sea fishing. And then up towards Talkeetna and Denali, we were able to stay there a total of 3 days in that area and do the fly fishing, the flight, and then have a day of decompression right in the middle of everything.
Yeah.
So it was great.
it sounds like it was as close to perfect of a trip as
It was.
other than Sherry's head almost getting hooked.
Yeah,
by her.
right. But it's when we go somewhere, we're foodies. We like to have good food to eat, and finding 49th State Brewing Company was just it was
Jackpot.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the first day there, we did find a place called Humpy's that we were able to eat king lobster or king crab and oysters and something else, but I don't remember what it was. But it was exceptional as well. So anyway.
Well, it is college admissions time, and with that, many students are receiving scholarships. Financial assistance for college comes in lots of shapes and sizes, and so do the tax consequences. First, congratulations if someone in your family has received a scholarship or other financial assistance to reduce the sky-high cost of higher education. But do you know if those benefits are taxable? With the fall semester starting soon, this is an important question, but answering it often seems to require a PhD.
Yep. For many affluent families, the taxable versus non-taxable distinction matters because students could owe tax on taxable financial assistance at their parents' rates instead of at their own. This is due to the kiddie tax, which is a federal rule that taxes a child's investment and passive income, which is unearned income, at the parent's higher marginal tax rate rather than the child's lower rate. And if the students are dependents of their parents, their standard deduction could be small. In addition, the American Opportunity Credit of up to $2,500 per student for college costs may not apply because it begins to phase out at $160,000 of income for married joint filers.
This is where a bewildering maze of tax rules come in. For example, schools must send both the Internal Revenue Service and students a 1098-T tax form showing tuition paid and scholarships awarded. But those 1098-Ts don't tell the full story regarding which assistance is and isn't taxable. Often, they don't include assistance from other organizations. Careful planning could also bring tax savings. For example, using scholarships and other assistance for tuition, not living costs. That's because these funds are often tax-free when used for tuition, but taxable when used for living costs. If the good news of a scholarship or other aid has brought you the bad news of complex tax issues, here's the help.
First, you need to know what assistance is tax-free and what is taxable. Assuming the school meets the legal requirements described in IRS Publication 970, funds from scholarships, grants, fellowships, and certain waivers are typically tax-free when used for tuition. They're also likely tax-free when used to pay for required books, fees, supplies, and equipment. The key here is required. If a student uses a scholarship dollar to pay to buy a computer, that is not required. Those funds are likely taxable. Financial assistance that is typically taxable includes funds used to pay for room, board, most travel, and optional expenses. In addition, money the student receives for other services, such as office work, is likely taxable, as are stipends for living expenses. In these cases, the income might be reported on a 1099 or a W-2.
Next, you want to educate yourself on the Form 1098-T. As previously noted, many colleges and universities are required to send Form 1098-T to the student and the IRS. On the form, Box 1 has qualified tuition and expenses paid by or on behalf of the student, and Box 5 gives the amount of scholarships or grants from the institution to the student and from third parties. But there are hitches. Form 1098-T often doesn't break out whether a portion of the scholarship or related funds are taxable. If, say, the student uses aid money for room and board, it's up to the student or parents to track this.
Yeah, and another thing to know is that independent providers of scholarships or assistance like stipends aren't required to issue these forms. That's the 1098-T. So students and parents are supposed to keep records and report what's taxable. Both IRS Publication 970 and Tax Topic 421 have information on how to report taxable amounts of scholarships and grants on the filer's tax return. So good record keeping is essential.
Yep. And once you understand the first two items, you need to time payments very carefully. In general, you want to match scholarships or other financial assistance to the tax year and the relevant costs that are incurred. Say that a college sends a bill for tuition and expenses before year end for the semester beginning the following January, and the student will be receiving a fellowship for part of it. To ward off confusion, try to pay the bill in the new year to make sure the costs, fellowship, and payments fall in the same year for tax purposes.
Right. So if your child has a 529 plan, you want to coordinate financial assistance with the withdrawals from the 529 to minimize taxes. Many parents save for college costs in tax-favored 529 education savings accounts. Withdrawals are tax-free when they are used to pay eligible, that's the key word, education expenses. The rules are often more generous for those more generous than scholarships and grants. And this is where planning can save on taxes. For example, 529 withdrawals used for room and board can be tax-free if the student is enrolled at least half time, unlike when scholarship dollars are used to pay those expenses. The withdrawals are also tax-free if used for a computer, software, and internet access that isn't required by the school, but is used mainly for education.
Yep. Students living and eating off campus can use 529 funds for rent and grocery bills as well, up to the limits that are often similar to the school's room and board charges. If you have a mix of scholarships and 529 funds, there are other considerations. Up to $10,000 of 529 account funds per student can be used to pay down student loans, and 529 funds can be used for graduate as well as undergraduate education. And a really nice feature of the 529 account is that up to $35,000 of the 529 funds can be rolled over into a Roth IRA for the account beneficiary, which is the student. This benefit comes with limits. Among other items, the beneficiary must be eligible for a direct Roth IRA contribution. Although the IRS hasn't released full guidance on this provision, taxpayers are using it.
Don't have nightmares over IRS enforcement. If you're confused by these rules, don't panic. Specialists say that they've seen almost no IRS enforcement on these tax rules in this area. As a result, taxpayers who make reasonable efforts to comply with the law and keep good records likely have little to fear. But don't take this as an excuse to fudge the numbers. You never know when the IRS might start reviewing returns with a focus on education line items.
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay, the everyday guide to supersizing your retirement account. More Americans have built up supersized sums in their tax-advantaged retirement accounts, but those with more modest means can also grow their own nest eggs bigger than they might think. Nearly 12,000 taxpayers had individual retirement accounts with at least $10 million in 2024, the latest year for which figures are available, according to new data prepared by the Nonpartisan Congressional Joint Committee on Taxation. That's up from a little bit over $3,600 with similar balances in 2019. Meanwhile, most Americans have saved less than $100,000 in their retirement accounts. Tax benefits boost returns for money stowed in a 401k or IRA. They shield investment income and gains on sales from taxation. Around 70% of private sector employees in the U.S. now have access to a 401k style retirement plan.
Yeah, there was a Wall Street Journal article this past week that explored how some people amassed retirement account fortunes by putting shares into startups during their IPOs, and when they were worth peanuts, and then watched their share prices multiply many times over. But you don't need access to startup shares to amass a significant amount of money in these accounts. So let's discuss how to bolster your retirement savings. The first step is to save the maximum. That sounds simple, right? Workers can put up to $24,500 into a 401k or similar workplace retirement plan this year. And people 50 and older can save $8,000 more in catch-up contributions for a total of $32,500. And those aged 60 through 63 can save even an additional $3,250 for a total of $35,750. The maximum typically rises each year with inflation, so be sure to check each year to understand the new limits and adjust your contributions accordingly.
Right. The same contribution limits apply to both traditional and Roth 401k accounts. And if you want to contribute to both, you have to divide the $24,500 between the two. In a traditional pre-tax retirement account, savers don't pay income tax on their contributions. Instead, they pay taxes when they withdraw the money. In a Roth account, owners contribute after-tax money, which can generally be withdrawn tax-free along with investment gains. It's possible to save even more by contributing up to an additional $7,500 to an IRA, a limit that rises to $8,600 for workers age 50 and older. However, some higher earners covered by a retirement plan at work won't be able to deduct their traditional IRA contributions.
The next way to increase your retirement account is to go through the back door. Direct Roth IRA contributions are off limits for single filers with modified adjusted gross incomes of $168,000 or more and couples with incomes of $252,000 or more. But they can still add funds indirectly through a backdoor Roth IRA conversion. To do this, first put money you already paid income tax on into a traditional IRA, then convert it to a Roth IRA. Because you already paid income tax on the contribution, you will only owe tax on the appreciation of your investments had earned when you convert the money. If you have multiple IRAs, there may be tax complications to pursuing this strategy.
Yep. And you could also do a mega backdoor Roth 401k conversion. The mega backdoor Roth conversion is available to a growing number of people with 401k accounts. This rests on a little known fact about the 401k plans. Employees can really set aside as much as $72,000 in these accounts this year under IRS rules, rising to as much as $80,000 for those 50 and older and $83,250 for those in their early 60s. To go beyond the usual $24,500 limit on pre-tax or Roth 401k contributions, a worker might be able to contribute as much as another $47,500 to the 401k. And then convert that money to a Roth 401k. And once the money is converted to a Roth, it grows tax-free. To take advantage of the mega backdoor strategy, you have to work for a company that lets employees make after-tax contributions to the 401k plan. Nearly 2/3 of the large 401k plans administered offer after-tax contributions. The vast majority of participants convert after-tax balances to a Roth inside the plan.
You've been listening to Your Money, brought to you by Lifespan Wealth Management, proudly serving Middle Georgia for over 30 years. Our mission? Helping folks just like you plan for a secure and stress-free retirement. Need a trusted financial advisor? Call us today at 478-922-8100 and schedule your complimentary consultation at our Macon or Warner Robins office. Want to learn more? Visit us anytime at retirerelax.com. Because when you plan smart, you can retire and relax. And here's something extra. We offer free educational seminars for the community. If your group needs a guest speaker, give us a call and let's make it happen. That's 478-922-8100. Now, let's get back to the show.
Some 401k plans will automate the conversions every pay period, and many also allow the conversion of pre-tax savings to a Roth. Someone who saved an equivalent of today's $72,000 maximum in a 401k account every year from 1984 until 2019, adding catch-ups once eligible, would have about $20.6 million by the end of 2024, assuming returns consistent with the S&P 500 index. Next, look into a cash balance pension plan. Cash balance plans have taken off in recent years, mainly with smaller businesses. Cash balance plans aren't available at most companies, but they are a valuable perk for workers with access to them.
And they aren't subject to the restrictions on annual 401k contributions because they are technically pensions with some features that resemble 401ks. People who save the most in them are typically business owners paid a share of the profits, such as partners in medical and law firms. In some of these plans, older, higher earners can put away as much as $397,000 a year. Though a younger and lower paid people, they have lower limits. In addition to saving in the cash balance plan, the business owners also often save up to the $72,000 annual 401k contribution limit. As with traditional 401ks and IRAs, cash balance plans allow users to defer paying income tax on the saved income, paying the income tax when they withdraw it. That's an attractive proposition for anyone expecting to be in a lower tax bracket once they retire.
That is very attractive. This year, the IRS allows people to accumulate up to about $3.7 million in a cash balance plan by age 62. When workers retire or change jobs, they typically roll their cash balance and 401k money into IRAs, creating some of those supersized accounts. So don't think that creating a sizable nest egg is not within your reach. Plan smartly and save as much as possible.
Absolutely. All right. Most families avoid detailed conversations about aging, housing, and care, and even though they're crucial. So let's discuss a way to start the talk with aging parents. This is one of the hardest and most important conversations we will have as adult children. Sitting down to discuss giving up the car, moving out of the family home, or planning for medical care, and how the estate plan is going to be handled is uncomfortable at best. Many adult children and older parents simply put it off, but it is a huge mistake. Many times people end up scrambling, often in response to an emergency, to figure out what to do at a time when no one is thinking clearly. Pretending you will never need care is naive and can bankrupt your entire family if you don't have a plan.
About 23.6 million adults care for older parents, and many haven't talked about that practical realities they might eventually have to manage. One recent survey found that less than 20% of adults have detailed conversations with loved ones about care preferences. The reasons vary, but fear is a big one. Conversations about the future and aging lead to thoughts about what is in store for all of us, death. Some parents say that they have plenty of time to talk about the future. Others think they have everything in place, estate plans, wills, and powers of attorney, so they're all set. Those documents are critical, but they might not address fundamental issues like housing and caregiving.
But how do you get the conversation started? We suggest starting with simple, basic questions that are caring, genuinely curious, and not intrusive. Questions like, what do you want? What's important to you? How can we make that happen? Then be prepared to listen and be respectful.
Yep. In my case, my mom and her husband live on 7 acres, and there's always something that needs to be done. And she's 88 years old, and he is 92 and not in great health. And if I ask my mom what her long-term plans are, and she always says she plans to remain in the house as long as possible, and then she wants to move into a nursing home. And I told her that we'd rather have her move in with us instead of a nursing home, but she says she does not want to be a bother to me or my brothers and sister. So, Jonathan, what do you guys do when you're meeting with clients? Do you have specific questions that you ask, or how do you approach that conversation?
Yeah, usually we talk a lot about this with clients for sure, who are dealing with getting older, from remodeling their home to how they can stay there as they age, to how other family members are needing and paying for care. Here's one question. How prepared would a family member be if something were to happen to you? Or how prepared do you feel with your parents aging? And these conversations, once started, are much easier the next time you want to discuss something with an aging parent. These conversations need to be ongoing affairs, though, since health and family dynamics tend to change. But you don't need to make discussions about decline or catastrophes. One of the most uncomfortable conversations involves driving. A parent might have a series of small accidents, but they don't mention them because they're embarrassed or afraid of losing their freedom. Some people voluntarily give up driving, But others resist this, even though I've never known anybody to voluntarily give up driving.
I've only known one person.
Okay, gotcha. But others resist this, even though they may have been involved in in several minor accidents. You can address this issue by appealing to their intelligence and sense of responsibility. Something like, you are a very smart person. How would you feel if you injured someone in an accident, somebody else?
And my mom's husband is a perfect example. They got a brand new van a couple of years ago, and about 6 months later, I went over there, and there's a big scrape all down the side of it. And the next month, there was a bumper that was all messed up. So, it does happen. And I think he is the one person that I know that voluntarily gave it up. So, it also helps to have a solution in common to common issues like how will they shop for food? Answers like buying groceries with a delivery service or an online purchasing at their favorite grocery store can make this work. And even arrange for services like Uber and Lyft or transportation specifically for seniors like GoGo grandparent.
Okay, so you've started the conversation and you need to think about how you will address objections or the parents trying to shut down conversations. Some common objections are that you want to discuss future care and the parents think that this is premature because they're in good health, or they stop listening to you when you suggest they need help.
Yeah, as a reminder, we have the Life Book on our website. This is a free downloadable PDF that you can put into a 3-ring binder and add information to it. So if you have an aging parent, this is an excellent way to get the conversation going. Simply print it out, punch the holes for the binder, and then personally deliver it to them and describe what you would like for them to include and why. And Sherry wrote this book in 2007 after seeing clients go through the things we've just discussed, as well as seeing family issues play out over the decades with caregivers and aging parents. Matter of fact, my mom and dad took care of their parents in their homes up until they died. And it was a real struggle because neither one of them wanted to move out of their homes. And my grandparents, Goss, did not want to, they didn't want to quit driving.
Yeah.
And they drove these giant Cadillacs and man, they were dangerous on the road. So it's best to have these conversations sooner rather than later.
For sure.
This next segment is not necessarily about money, but it could affect your health. Ticks. Ticks are invading the Midwest. Lyme disease and alpha-gal syndrome, which many people have never heard of, are affecting the entire eastern side of the United States. Warmer winters and shifts in land use have brought ticks and the diseases they carry into new territory. With summer in full swing, health officials are warning of increasing risk from these two of the most common tick-borne conditions. Lyme disease. Until recently, Ohio and Michigan had relatively low rates of Lyme disease. In 2025, cases jumped more than 60% in Ohio from a year earlier. In Michigan, they rose almost 80%. So you can see how fast this is spreading.
Yep. The spread of Lyme disease is tied to the growth of white-tailed deer populations. These deer are primary hosts for black-legged ticks, which carry the Lyme bacteria. The deer population has rebounded in numbers over the last 100 years as forests once raised for farming and logging have grown back, and deer have returned, and so have the ticks. By 1996, about 400 U.S. counties had established populations of eastern black-legged ticks. By 2025, though, the number had reached 1,300 counties. As the tick populations expand, Lyme disease cases are rising. In 2023, the most recent year for which the data is available, the U.S. cases have climbed 43% to almost 90,000 cases. But the actual cases might be 5 times higher because of underreporting, because a lot of times people don't know that they've got it. Infections often cause a rash at the bite site. Other early symptoms include fever, fatigue, and muscle aches. While most people recover completely when treated with antibiotics, some experience prolonged symptoms.
Yep, and then there's the alpha-gal syndrome, which is primarily caused by lone star ticks. Like black-legged ticks, they benefit from rebounding deer populations, while warmer winters allow the cold-sensitive species to push further north. For much of the 20th century, the lone star tick was rarely recorded north of southern New Jersey. Now it's gaining a foothold in the Midwest. As of 2025, lone star ticks were established in 19 counties in Ohio and 5 in Michigan, according to the CDC. Ohio State University warned this spring that alpha-gal syndrome is increasingly reported in southern Ohio due to the expansion of the lone star tick. The lone star tick is widely established across forested and grassy regions throughout Georgia, particularly the Piedmont, southeastern plains, and coastal plains.
Go ahead.
Georgia has seen a sharp increase in diagnoses, prompting local institutions like UGA to host regional education symposium and tracking efforts by groups like Emory University to monitor the spread.
Yeah, if you don't know what the Lone Star tick looks like, it's just like a tick and it's got a white dot on his back. That's why they call it the Lone Star.
Yeah.
So,
Nationally, more than 110,000 suspected cases of alpha-gal syndrome were identified between 2010 and 2022. Because of underreporting, the number of people affected might be closer to 450,000, according to the CDC. Unlike Lyme disease, which is caused by tick-borne pathogen, alpha-gal syndrome is an allergy triggered by tick bites. The tick releases a sugar molecule into the bloodstream of its victims. The immune system might then identify this sugar, which is common in mammals such as cows and pigs, as a foreign threat, causing an allergic reaction the next time the person eats meat. This can range from mild hives to life-threatening anaphylaxis. The meats that trigger the reaction are red meats: beef, veal, pork, venison, goat, rabbit, squirrel, and other wild game. The majority of the bite victims don't develop a meat allergy. For those who do, sensitivity can lessen over time, particularly if you don't get bitten again.
right. And so, what can you do to protect yourself? Well, first, you need to understand that ticks live in grassy and bushy wooded habitats. When entering these areas, use insect repellents, walk in the center of the trails, and wear long sleeve shirts and tuck your pants cuffs into your socks or shoes. Once back inside, do a thorough body check, full body tick check. Showering within 2 hours of coming inside reduces the risk of getting Lyme disease and might reduce the risk of other tick-borne illnesses. So anyway, ticks are bad, so be careful with that, especially the alpha-gal. All right, our next topic applies to anyone who may need to apply for a mortgage. There was a Wall Street Journal survey that shows that American home buyers and owners pay tens of billions of dollars more for not shopping around for the best mortgage. It is one of the few ways to lower the cost of buying when your home prices are prohibitive like they are right now and mortgage rates are high. The problem, or should I say the cause, is that people don't shop around. The data shows that all socioeconomic classes, even the high earners, are guilty of this. Those who bought homes since 2022 now collectively pay an estimated $65 billion annually in avoidable mortgage cost. The report shows that people with higher incomes who are older and often the ones who are paying the steepest price.
Yep. Research consistently finds many Americans get just one quote. Even though mortgage rates have recently been stuck in the mid to high 6% that is, I believe it boils down to the fact that no one likes submitting tax returns and bank statements over and over and over again, or comparing lenders against one another and negotiating, all on a very tight timeline oftentimes. On Thursday, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate was averaging about 6.69%. The report, which was quite extensive, analyzed 3.2 million mortgage originations tracked in federal housing data and benchmarked them against Bankrate's digital loan marketplace. No one likes taxes, but if you don't shop around for the best mortgage rate, you basically end up paying a hidden homeownership tax.
That's right. Because of how interest costs accumulate, even a fraction of a percent of extra interest adds up over 30 years. For the typical borrower, this complacency compounds to about $78,000 over the life of the loan. Previous research has found that people who aren't savvy about their mortgage choices effectively provide a subsidy to people who make better choices. But earning more money doesn't automatically make you a smarter mortgage shopper. In fact, the opposite is often true. Regulatory guardrails embedded in the FHA and VA loans, such as strict fee caps, help protect lower-income borrowers from taking extremely overpriced loans. But many wealthy buyers frequently overpay. Instead of forcing the banks to compete for their business, high earners are more likely to trust a single recommendation from a real estate agent or a wealth manager. When it comes to getting a mortgage, older generations face a hidden seniority tax because they don't comparison shop as much as younger borrowers.
The real divide happens during refinancing, when unhurried homeowners get to choose how hard they look for a deal. Adults under 35 turn out to be the savviest shoppers when it comes to refinancing, according to research. Borrowers who are highly qualified are often more likely to overpay because their lack of approval anxiety or not being approved suppresses the motivation to comparison shop. But it is interesting that buyers with the lowest debt burdens relative to their incomes tend to have the highest rate of overpayment, and that's what research found. In contrast, financially stretched buyers closer to their lending limits tend to secure better overall pricing, largely because financial necessity forces them to shop harder. It may be a pain to do research, but as we said, it can save you thousands over the life of your loan.
Absolutely. All right, shifting gears. Job seekers can now spend thousands of dollars to obtain AI certificates. The big question, is it worth it? At the time when more employers want workers who know the way around artificial intelligence, more job seekers want to show off their knowledge with badges, credentials, and certificates. People can now certify their expertise with particular AI platforms and strategies through paid and free certification programs. These credentials are meant to help workers prove that they have the skills, like devising effective prompts or using AI to enhance a business's strategy. There's been a big jump in people seeking these certifications. Before ChatGPT was released in 2022, just 1 to 2% of workers' credentials were AI related. Now, almost 30% of all professional credential employees report having an AI-related certificate.
As more employers ask that job applicants be AI fluent and more workers wonder whether AI is coming for their job, the great AI certification race is on. There's one catch, though. Job seekers are trying to figure out whether these certifications are actually worth it, especially when some courses can cost hundreds or potentially thousands of dollars. These certifications might help a job seeker burnish their skills and stand out. However, market experts advise that you don't overestimate the value of these credentials. You should consider these credentials as the cherry on top of your resume. It will make you stand out, and it shows initiative. Generally, employers like people who are committed to their continuing education and upskilling and going above and beyond. But there's no guarantee that the AI cert will get you in the door. AI certs are one type of non-degree credential that are becoming more common in the job market as workers weigh whether higher education costs are worth the investment. It's difficult to know if more employers are asking for them, but students and workers have shown more interest in attaining them, and providers are trying to meet the moment.
So, where can you get these AI certifications? Major tech companies, including Google, Amazon, NVIDIA, Microsoft, and IBM, now offer AI certifications. Amazon, for example, offers a 90-minute exam to become an AWS, or an Amazon Web Services Certified AI Practitioner, for $100. Major universities such as MIT, Johns Hopkins University, and the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School have multi-week online courses. The 8-week MIT program costs $2,847 and includes a capstone project where students create an actionable AI strategy for their company. OpenAI and Anthropic also offer their own certifications. LinkedIn Learning is another destination for certifications and badges. The career platform offers more than 150 different AI certifications. The training is open to premium subscribers and people with access through an organization like their employer.
There's been a slew of lawsuits against coding boot camps in recent years, which are a reminder it doesn't always work out well when workers pay to learn new skills. The economy may have already zoomed past the skill, or bad actors could be trying to take advantage of the moment.
In the glut of new AI certifications, there are likely a couple of money grab scams out there. Beware of any certification program that promises a job at the end. Also, watch out for AI certifications offered by unknown organizations. This is where some online research on the business or organization would go a long way. The million-dollar question is trying to understand if AI certifications are worth the money. On average, research shows that having non-degree certifications can modestly help a person in the job market. Yet the return on investment can vary widely depending on industries and location.
The AI world is still evolving, and because it's a new field, it's even more difficult to measure the potential payoff of these training programs. Some credentials can be obtained for free or very low cost, like the one from Amazon. On the other hand, for example, the University of Oxford one costs over $8,000. But good training doesn't need to cost thousands of dollars. You might want to look for a program that allows for hands-on training. You also want to determine how the training is going to convert to the real-world workplace. Another thing I would look for is the ability to interact with others. Having those interactions usually pushes people beyond just an interactive online training program. The last thing to determine is whether the training is going to be an additive to your current training or an add-on module that does not add to your overall training.
Yeah, and obviously you want to know how much more pay an AI certificate can get you. Well, the data on this is still in flux, but government data shows about $8,000 more. But the jobs wherein that's in jobs when AI isn't the central role. Workers who get certificates may look like proactive upskillers to the employers, and the potential pay increase could be about $11,000. In jobs that are more in danger of being eliminated by AI, the certificate may appear to be a defensive maneuver instead of showing ambition, and the gain could be more modest, say around $5,000. So let's assume you went out and obtained an AI certification. What do you do next? Well, you send out your resumes, but you need to understand that when the recruiter reviews your resume, their eyes will scan the work experience at the top of the resume first. And certifications traditionally appear lower in the document. So you need to find some task that you used your AI training to complete and move that item to the top into the work experience section. And there are sites like GitHub where the tech sector job seekers can show off their technical portfolio and apply their certifications and knowledge.
Yep. If you can get an interview, you must understand that employers usually aren't just hiring you for your skill alone. They're looking for people that they can plug into their organization. So don't lose sight of the person behind those certifications and what you can offer to an employer. Remember, your personal connections and human brand are what will differentiate you from your peers. All right, quickly, we got a couple minutes. Collision insurance on an older car. Is it worth it? No matter how old your car is, you need collision insurance if you hold it onto a loan or a lease. But what if you're not leasing your car, or what if your loan is paid off? Although collision insurance isn't mandated in any state, it can prove valuable if you're an at-fault driver in an accident. Whether it's worth the price depends on multiple factors, including how much it would cost to fix the damage, what you can afford to pay for repairs, your car's value, your deductible, and more, which we're going to discuss here for a couple of minutes. A lot of people don't understand what collision insurance is and why it's important. Collision insurance will help cover vehicle repair or replacement costs if you're in a collision with another car, get hit by an uninsured driver, roll your vehicle, or collide with a fixed object like a telephone pole or a mailbox. But if you're in a crash in which you're at fault, you don't have collision coverage, you're on your own. The entire cost of fixing or replacing your ride will fall on you.
Interestingly, no matter where you live in the U.S., collision coverage is not required by law. However, if you lease or finance your car purchase, the lender will insist you have collision coverage to protect their collateral, which is the vehicle. When you buy collision coverage, you don't select policy limits like you do for liability coverage. Instead, the insurance company agrees to pay for repair or replacement costs up to the car's actual cash value at the time a covered incident occurs. The catch is that the value amount isn't what you owe on the car, but the car's market or book value at the time of the crash. For example, if you get into an accident with full coverage and your car's book value or worth is $17,000, they'll pay for up to $17,000 in repairs minus your deductible or replacement costs. But if the car is only worth $5,000, they'll pay for up to $5,000. What you may still owe on a loan doesn't enter the insurance provider's decision making.
Yep. But here's a tip for you: GAP, or Guaranteed Asset Protection. Insurance is a separate insurance policy covering the difference between your car's book value and the balance remaining on your car loan. It ensures that if your car is totaled in a covered crash, the settlement will cover any outstanding loan balance. To me, this is a good deal considering that many vehicles, especially used ones, depreciate quicker than what is owed on the vehicle. Now, there are a few solid reasons to drop collision coverage on an older car, but it's a bit complicated. Moreover, you may be surprised by some of the traditional factors that no longer figure prominently into determining a car's used value. Age and mileage are no longer foolproof indicators of a need for collision coverage or insurance on an older car. Both were key calculations, but insurers have realized that some older cars hold their value. For example, if your car is 10 years old but still worth $10,000, it is still probably worth paying a few $100s every year for the collision coverage. On the flip side, if it is 7 years old and only worth $3,000, keeping collision insurance may not make sense.
To be continued next week. Everybody have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk to you then.
Thanks for listening to Your Money, produced by Lifespan Wealth Management. As financial advisors, the main thing they do is provide retirement planning and advice and manage their clients' investment accounts. If you're looking for a financial advisor, please contact their office at 478-922-8100 to set up your complimentary consultation. You can learn more about them by visiting their website, retirerelax.com. And if you have a question or a topic that you would like them to cover in next week's broadcast, you can email Randy at rfmoney.com. They look forward to connecting with you next week. Have a great weekend, everyone. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Osaic Wealth Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Osaic Wealth is separately owned, and other entities and or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Osaic Wealth.